Today, we are going to explore the world of motivation, so how you can set really meaningful and inspiring goals and overcome any hurdles that might stand in your way.
I'm sure we have all set out with full gusto and energy to want to go and achieve our heart's desire, whatever that is, only to fall foul to the good old-fashioned unreliable willpower.
Yeah.
You know, why is it our motivation wanes when actually we still want the thing, we want the outcome, but we've got this challenge of getting ourselves fired up, getting ourselves out there, and sustaining high levels of motivation. And this is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and a lot of time talking to people about over many, many years. And there's a lot of science around it actually today, as we well both know.
Yeah.
So we can bring a bit more science rather than good old-fashioned, let's get positive and let's go for it. So that is the goal, is to try and unpick how can we be more sustainable in our approach to things so that we are much more likely, given that life's outcomes are often accumulative, and if you've got this sort of stop-start, go-stop kind of approach to life, then you're probably not going to get the outcomes you want.
Yeah, so we'll explore a little bit about the science behind motivation, but get very quickly into some strategies that will help you really get clear on what it is you want to achieve and then apply the motivation in order to be able to achieve that in a sustainable way.
Absolutely. When we think about the human kind, the human nature, at the absolute essence of who we are, and we'd be nothing without this. I don't know what if the listener is thinking, what is this? Who would we be without this one thing? We'd be nothing. We'd do nothing. And that word is desire. It fuels everything we do. The desire to want to meet somebody, be with people, fulfillment, connection with nature, gathering of wisdom, building relationships, achievement, success.
So are you saying these we all have common innate desires within us?
It's a natural state of being.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot, if you just think about, if you did nothing, if you just got up, if we had nothing to do, just imagine that, a world of doing absolutely nothing. Now, I know some people are thinking, well, geez, I would love a day of doing nothing.
I wouldn't mind
but
that.
if that turned into day 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 155, suddenly I mean, even if you're a bit of a lazy individual, you like doing nothing, after a while, you'll still have the desire to want to eat, sexual fulfillment, building relationships, being with other people, connection, etc. It's still there. In other words, it's such an essential and natural energy that we can tap into. And if you learn how to tap into that desire and how to sustain that desire, we then got to deal with the human system, the brain, the way that it works, our emotions. So what I'm saying is, even though we might have a desire to want to build a business, we have a desire to want to build a relationship, date with somebody, a desire to want to achieve some sporting accomplishment. Yeah. There's still a barrier to getting there because the effort you have to put in over a period of time, the discipline you have to put in order to get that is going to require good old-fashioned motivation.
But the thing is, the advertising industry and corporate organisations tap into this all of the time, and that therein lies part of the problem, because the number of things that we are exposed to and the number of things we choose then to desire, whether that be through, what we see on the TV, on social media, we have a window into other people's lives and what everybody else is doing. there is so much that could take your attention. Just having the desire, you can't actually, achieve everything. There's a finite amount of time. So you have to be really intentional where you choose to spend that time.
Yeah, and advertisers, you say, are very clever at making things that you didn't necessarily deem to be desirable, very desirable.
You didn't know you desired that thing, and all of a sudden it's arriving on your doorstep.
I mean, who would have thought that you would end up spending an hour and a half, 2 hours, God, for some people even longer, just mindless scrolling on a phone, flicking through videos. And whilst there can be some worth in this, if you're watching good stuff that is of value and educational, etc., quite often it's not.
No.
But the feeling of that little dopamine hit you get, oh, it's exciting, this is exciting, this is exciting. It's a distraction.
And what's coming next?
Yeah.
They are. Some of the things we're going to unpack. They're perfectly keeping you hooked in with little rewards the whole way along.
It's very clever, isn't it? The algorithms watch for what you are watching and what you love and what keeps you on their platforms, and they keep serving up more of it. I mean, there was that documentary that was done where they sort of played this out with characters and had someone standing there with a phone, and then got someone in the control room who was acting effectively as the algorithm, playing it out. Oh, send him some more of this. Oh, he's about to leave. Give him something else. Make him, what you're doing is you're playing on a natural human state. Yeah. So what we've got to do is learn how to control it and utilize it in a very powerful way.
Absolutely.
And that is, and as we alluded to earlier, willpower is probably one of the most unreliable forms of motivation. You need something else to make sure that you sustain the level of discipline.
So if desire is like the root and the sort of catalyst, if we desire something and then we set a goal around something, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to achieve it. So what is it that's at play that determines the level of motivation that we have towards a goal?
Well, I would say, first of all, how important it is to you. And, and particularly whether that motivation is intrinsic or extrinsic. Yeah. Are you being motivated by something which is coming from within and you naturally desire for your own reasons? You are naturally motivated to want to go and do something versus doing something to please someone else.
Or what someone else has told you would be a
or what you feel you ought to be doing.
Yeah. Ought to versus want to.
Yeah, that exactly. And so if you can attach yourself to those things that truly are a deep source of happiness and fulfillment, in other words, desire. So when we talk about desires and all the various different forms of desire, contentment, happiness, fulfillment, achievement, partnering, etc., there's various different ways of achieving those things, multiple ways in which you can achieve happiness, for example. But what you go in pursuit of to achieve that happiness or that achievement and how deep and meaningful it is to you. Because in other words, you could go off on a course of action because you feel that it's going to please your parents. All right, I better go and get this, flashy job or be a professional lawyer or something rather than actually being an artist or something. Something that's actually something you is something you love to do. And if you pursue those things that don't really provide you with a high level of intrinsic motivation, then I would suggest that your motivation is going to wane. Or, quite frankly, you'll just suffer it.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard work at best.
We meet plenty of people that have gone down a route of so-called, suffering's a bit of a harsh word, but in other words, making do, putting up with something they don't really want to do, but they're doing it because they feel they ought to do it, and it's superficial, providing some form of happiness. So intrinsic, absolutely, I would suggest that is much more sustainable over a period of time. There's a little experiment they did with children where they took a group of children, and these children, they took a group of children that love drawing. Yeah. Right. Then they split that children into two groups, the children that love drawing, and they started giving gold stars for the children that would draw pictures, and the other group, they did not. And after a period of time, they then withdrew the gold star reward mechanism, and lo and behold, the motivation of the children that have been receiving those gold stars went down in order to want to draw. So whereas the other group continued to draw, right?
So the gold star group became first intrinsically motivated, but then became extrinsically motivated by the presence of a gold star.
So there's less pleasure associated with the external reward, and much more pleasure associated with doing something for self, because you want to do it. So for all of these little incentives and things that we try and provide for our employees, or employ for our children, or employ for our partners, whatever,
they could actually be having a detrimental effect.
They could. And I mean, I remember very clearly my son James. He showed a very early appetite to want to play the piano, very musical. So James used to jump up on the little stool, and he'd be tinkering on the ivories, and beautiful, lovely, little tunes emerging. Kind of went on, 6, 7, etc. And like any good intentioned parents, we thought, we know what we need to do. We need to get James some lessons. So enter the 1940s archetypal tweed-dressed piano teacher. Absolutely hated it. Absolutely, because then we had to do it.
Exactly the same thing with Tilly.
Yeah.
We bought the piano. We did the lessons.
Yeah, right.
We've still got said piano.
Yeah.
And listening to a previous of our podcasts, I do intend to actually learn to play it this year.
Yeah.
But did the lessons, bought the piano, and chopsticks is still the full extent of her repertoire.
Well, with James, what happened is that he just completely, his own mind, he hated going to the lesson because he had to do it a certain way. He wasn't allowed to do what he wanted to do. Yes, James, we'll come to that later, darling. Now we're going to do this. This is how we need to do this. This is how we need to do that. And I mean, it won't come as any surprise. James, at now age 30, is still playing music, sings in a band, plays the bass, plays the keyboards. He was actually talking about getting a keyboard the other day again. So he did go back to it. But I've got to say, there was probably some 2 or 3 years where he never went near that piano stall again.
Yeah.
For fear we were going to send him back to
the tweeded lady.
Yeah, to a tweeded 1940s.
But that's the whole thing about motivation,
teacher.
Isn't it? If you choose to do something, it feels very different than if you're forced to do something, which at the root of it can cause some stress, because you're being forced outside of what you're choosing to do.
So I think it's just important to ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing, which comes to our next point about why, why behind the what. Simon
Sinek said, working hard for something we don't care about is stressful, but working hard for something we really, really care about is where passion comes from.
Absolutely. Passion is so important. Passion, desire, understanding, doing something that is honouring something you love to do. And a lot of the work that we do with our Power Up program is really trying to help people set a course of action that centres around essentially 3 things. One is, what do you love to do?
Yeah.
What really floats your boat? What makes you feel happy? When you think about the opportunity of doing those tasks or that activity, it fills you with joy. Time passes away really quickly. So what do you love to do? The second thing is, how does that coincide with something you're naturally good at? The two tend to go together, but not always. You could be good at spreadsheets, but don't like doing them. You could be fairly artistic, but it's not your thing. But generally, the two are linked together. So what do you love to do? What are you really good at? What it feels reasonably effortless, and actually with effort, you get the benefit of getting really good, and therefore it becomes even more enjoyable. If you're a snooker player and you've got a real aptitude for doing it, it's great playing a great shot or playing tennis or whatever. It feels great. And then, but in a commercial sense or a work career sense, how can those two overlap with what an organisation needs to be done? What is the job they need? Or if you're running your own business, how can you bring both of those natural talents and that thing you love to do to a good cause where you're adding value to other people. In other words, serving a business need, a market need.
And so the convergence of those three things is a real sense of purpose, or
it's essentially
why
very,
you're doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. It's what the Japanese coin is the phrase ikigai.
Yeah.
And they've got a slightly more elaborate model of this. And it's definitely worth checking out, by the way, ikigai. I love that concept. And, it's a phrase given to a sense of joy, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. And, there are people in Japan, as you well know, lived many, many years, some of the oldest people on earth. Yeah. And one of the key things around the people in those towns and villages is they are all essentially, common trait is they are living their life with serving their ikigai.
Yeah.
What is the why behind the what? You're much more it fuels motivation at a much deeper level. Even in organizations, think about it. If you set goals for somebody, KPIs, measures, and attach rewards to those things, they will certainly provide a certain amount of motivation.
For a period of time.
Yeah. Should that be something that I actually want to do anyway, back to our intrinsic, then I'm much more motivated to want to do that thing. It's a classic example of the cathedral builders, the site of cathedral builders, and you've got these different trades, people doing different things, and you've got these sculptors, and he's got to chip it away at the stones. He said, what are you doing? He said, I'm a sculptor, I've got to sculpt angels on these stones, and I've done 200, I've got to do another 1,000 or whatever. Chip it away for years. Second sculptor is much the same thing. However, the third sculptor, when asked what is he doing, he said, I'm building a cathedral.
Yes.
And that is it's got more meaning to it, isn't it? I'm building a cathedral, a place of worship, a place of people coming together, a place of community that will sustain hundreds of years. Yeah, it's got a little bit more to it. If you're selling widgets and your goal is to sell 1,000 widgets per week, and that's your reward is linked to selling those widgets, well, when you get connected to what those widgets will do for people and the life-changing impact for a business or for an individual, then my motivation goes up because I know everything I'm doing every day is adding value to the world.
So if people are really clear on what they want to do, but more importantly, why they want to do it, because I could think, right, I want to run a marathon this year because I want to, get really fit and, improve my overall health. Mm-hmm. Is that enough?
Is that enough? One would like to think it would be, but now you're met in the cold heart of the winter with having to get up and do another long run before the weekend, and other things appear to be more desirable, short term, immediate gain from staying in bed, staying warm, rather than the effort required to get up and go out in the cold.
And so the why in itself, whilst, really important in terms of the longer term goal, is that enough to get me out of bed, or is it the wrong why if it's not?
Well, I think actually what we start moving into here is where science can help with how we sustain that motivation. And I'm not proclaiming here to be a neuroscientist, and I don't have the technical explanation that somebody has the technical ability to explain it. But if we look at our reward system, which we know is very linked to dopamine, we experience this neurotransmitter, this brain chemical release when we achieve something. And that can be a compliment. It could be you posting something on social media and getting a little like and getting all buzzy about it. It could be achieving something in a sports match or something, or being numerous things. But we're getting a temporary little hit from that, and we're kind of seeking those things because it does make us feel good. But I think what the neuroscience is very clever at doing is explaining how the dopamine system works. And essentially, if we are linking too much of that dopamine hit to the end goal and not to the effort, then that becomes a lot more difficult to sustain that motivation.
And I guess our beliefs about things show up in our behaviours, don't they? So if we don't believe that that goal is achievable, then we're much more likely for that behaviour to be consistent over time. So I do think that there's two things. There's one, are you really clear on the why, and do you have belief in your ability to achieve the why, and are you setting yourself up in such a way that is too far away? You can't see that end goal, and so the reward for that consistent behaviour is just too far, in the distance.
Well, I use sort of an example of imagine like a rubber band.
Yeah.
And there has to be tension, creative tension between the outcome and the effort. If that effort required, or the goal is so far away, it's such a stretch goal.
Yeah.
Effectively, the elastic band's going to stretch, rubber band's going to stretch, and it's going to snap.
Yeah.
Right. If you imagine the elastic band is too loose, it's not serving any purpose, it's not doing its job of holding something together. So you want to create that sense of, when I'm coaching people, and because it's not an ego kind of flattering exercise, and they say, what do you want to achieve? They go, well, I want to go from 0 to hero in no time. I want to build a business that is 7 figures within my first 3 months, or I want to get 4 promotions faster, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right? I know they're heading for disappointment. I mean, I love the desire, love the energy, love the ambition, love all of that. Great. But I guess, wisdom teaches you that it's better to put something in place which is much more sustainable and much more believable to your unconscious mind.
And so does that mean, that's the end goal? You step back and break that end goal down into smaller, more manageable.
This comes back to the kind of the science again of the mini rewards. If you're only rewarding, your example, if you're only rewarding yourself and your whole reward system is around getting that marathon medal hanging around your neck of the 26 mile, that's a long 3 months you've got there. And this is why a lot of people give up, or people give up in sales, or people give up, their first attempt to qualify for us, into a sports team or whatever it might be. What will keep you going is recognizing the mini achievements on the way. And you determine what they are, by the way. Getting out the door and running a mile down the road is an achievement if you haven't run at all.
Yeah.
So deciding that's going to be your reward system.
I think Andrew Huberman calls it self-directed horizon control. So many horizons, many rewards, many dopamine hits, sustained motivation.
Yeah. And he talks a lot about rewarding the effort. In the example I was talking about earlier, about with the children and the gold stars, there becomes far less pleasure associated with the outcome. Yeah. And therefore your baseline for feeling good has to go up because you're not getting the same hit. Think about addiction. It starts off small, doesn't satisfy you now because that's too easy to achieve. So you have to bigger hit and a bigger hit and a bigger hit. That addiction, addiction can come in various guises, can't it? It could be alcohol, could be drugs, could be sex, could be
social media,
could be work, all right? Could be work.
Yeah.
Addicted to people liking you, or addicted to money. You're still looking for, for that extra little hit.
Yeah. A return for the attention on something.
Indeed. So I do think we'll put the link in the notes here. But I think there's a lot of value really understanding scientifically how the dopamine reward system works, and recognizing that. And this is the wonderful thing, isn't it, about modern day neuroscience, motivation, performance. We didn't know about these. These things were so less accessible to the average person on the street. 25, 30 years ago, we just go around charging and, getting ourselves fired up in different ways and motivation.
We had no real appreciation of the massive system in our brain that was at work.
You can literally understand why, excuse the language, you feel shit and why your motivation goes down. Yeah. And you can understand why you feel so high. And so, look, in essence, what we're saying here is that if you can attach a greater level of reward to the friction you experience in trying to achieve the goal.
To the effort.
Yeah. And decide in advance and actually in the moment tell yourself, like going to the gym. You know, if your goal is to lose a couple of stone or change your body shape, if you just keep looking in the mirror every day, oh, I'm not quite there yet, oh, God, such a drag, I've got the 85 sessions to do in the gym over 2 years to get there. No, all right, you've got to reward yourself. In the moment, you're feeling the pain, actually.
Yeah.
In the gym, pushing the weight, last few come out, and you go, great. Feel good about that.
And what do you think provides more motivation, the pursuit of pleasure of something or the avoidance of pain?
Well, great question. And it does vary from one person to another. I think personally, my experience is that utilizing both of these systems is much more powerful than relying on just one.
Yeah.
So, for example, for some people, when they think about, let's say you're trying to motivate somebody to achieve a promotion. You could say to that person, look, you know, I think we've got some great opportunities coming up, and I want you to be in pole position for those opportunities. I'm going to put you on a training program. I'm going to provide these. I want you to do this, this, and this, and work a little bit harder this. Put your hand up more for this. Take more responsibility, and that's going to have a demonstration of a track record. It's going to demonstrate that you're in, you know, perfect position to get this promotion. So it's very kind of outcome positive.
Growth.
You're going to get more money. You're going to get more growth. You're going to get, you know, expand your horizons, expand your knowledge and connections in the business, etc., etc. Great. Now, for one person, that could be all you need. For another person, however, they go, yeah, okay, great. But phrased a slightly different way, if you say to that very same person, look, we've got these promotion opportunities coming up, and my big concern is you're not going to be ready for it. The opportunity's going to come round. You know who your colleagues are who could be up for this promotion as well. My job is to make sure you're in pole position for this. And I think the way we're heading at the moment, it worries me. You're not paying attention to the learning you need. You're not growing as fast. You're not putting your hand up. You're not connecting with people. I'm saying all the same things, but I'm saying them in a slightly more negative, what we call moving away from motivation as opposed to moving towards.
And so that's just having an understanding of individuals within a team in that context to know what.
Put in very blunt terms, you know, are you being motivated by gain, positive reward, excitement, or are you being actually more motivated by fear?
Yeah.
And the reality is you can't get away from it because our innate primitive system is built around avoiding failure and pain. A large part of us is actually, you know, we're much more motivated to do something when we're threatened by something. You know, you've literally got 4 days to get this form in. Otherwise, the opportunity is going to be passed, or, you know, bit like kind of delaying revising for your exams and cramming all at the end because you know you have to do it.
I did that
all right?
quite a lot.
You know,
I think as well, you know, going back to the marathon example, you know, the key, I guess, when you're lying in your comfy bed and, you know, you're feeling all lovely and warm and it's icy outside, but you know you need to go for a run, is to somehow associate the pain with staying in bed rather than the pain being associated. So it's almost like switching it, isn't it?
That's right. We call it flicking the switch gear.
To amping up the pleasure associated with getting out and going for a run. And that could be as much as how brilliant you're going to feel at the end of it and how rubbish you'll feel if you just stay in bed, although it feels nice, you know, right now.
If you can get that feeling that you know you will get when you go for the run, you come back, you take a nice shower, and you feel those lovely endorphins running around your body, it feels fantastic. If you can get that, if you can tap into that motivation or tap into that neurochemical before you go, by thinking about it and thinking how good it's going to be.
Yeah. And you know, your brain doesn't know the difference between whether it's real or not. So you do actually physically get that.
You need to trick the system.
You trigger that.
Yeah.
But you can't actually just lie in bed and then imagine yourself going for a run. It doesn't
quite work
the same way.
No.
Sadly.
And also, I think taking the guesswork out of it as well, deciding in advance that you're going to do that no matter what. And when the alarm bell goes off, it's a good feeling, not a bad feeling. Cold is a good feeling. You know, you've got to gear yourself.
Yeah.
As you said, you've got to associate and ramp up the positive associations with what you're currently experiencing as a sort of a negative thing. It's a bit like someone, I don't know, let's say they want to go on a promotion trail, but they recognise that a big part of that is they've got to do more public speaking. Now, as we know, public speaking is not necessarily on people's list of favourite things to do. Ranks very highly in a list of fears, probably above death.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it does actually rank above death.
I think it does actually, yeah. People rather die than speak in public. Crazy. If you know that you're going to have to do presentations, you're going to have to put yourself out there and get yourself known, you will have to do some work on yourself to change those associations. And so when you think about public speaking, you gear your brain to think about to trigger off a reward system, and to think about, well, what would be the upside of doing this? Yeah,
what do I set to gain?
Yeah, what do I gain from it, or what will be the positive benefits? And really, and again, not just sort of. Again, if you're listening to thinking, oh yeah, I'm sure that's going to work, Martin. Well, actually, if all you do is just sort of think about it in a loose kind of way, it probably won't work. But if you get closely and deeply associated with the feeling that goes with being able to get that outcome, then you will provide the motivation. You've got to ask yourself, what could be great about this?
Yeah.
What could be great? What else could be great about it? What else could be great about it? And then keep telling yourself, use all the stuff we talk about, internal language, to using some mantras, internal dialogue, using visualization, getting positive pictures of the outcome you're trying to achieve. All of these things don't happen in isolation. These are the mechanics behind being able to sustain that level of motivation.
Daniel Pink, in his book Drive, he talks about 3 things being the sort of core of motivation: autonomy, so a sense of control over what you're doing; mastery, so being good at something; and purpose, which does link back to the sort of ikigai model that you just mentioned. But in that sort of context around doing something like public speaking, I think as long as you feel control over that decision, you're not being forced to do it, you're choosing to do it, that you have the opportunity to learn some of the skills and practice and start the process of mastery around it, and understand why you're doing it in terms of where it could lead you. That in itself provides the motivation to do it as well. If you're just sort of like forced to go up there with no support and no, skill development.
Part of something bigger, there is a bigger why behind the what, behind the means. Public speaking is an enabler to being able to get the job that I want, have the opportunities at work, etc.
Yeah.
And I think a big fan of Daniel Pink. And I think it's great that, this is a fairly recent, I think probably the last 7 or 8 years, I think that book was written. He's written since then. But Drive was, we know he's got a big body of researchers, does his homework. Hey, isn't it no surprise again that those 3 things come up? And it's not like these things haven't been discovered before.
No.
If you go back to one of the classic kind of 1950s American positive psychology books by Napoleon Hill.
Yes, yeah.
Think and Grow Rich. It sounds a bit kind of all about money, but it actually is not. All these things are in there. These very same principles, desire, autonomy, linking to purpose, thinking something is important, of value to you, it's there. And dare I say, even if you go further back and you start looking at some of the sort of scriptures and writings, they are there. They exist. So what we have now, what I was saying earlier, and what we have now is more scientific proof.
Neuroscientific, isn't it?
Neuroscientific proof that how the system actually works.
Yeah, why those things
and why
are the
those
things
work.
to
Yeah,
focus
exactly.
on.
What is actually happening in the brain. if we think about motivation is a feeling. Feeling is a result of our chemistry. And therefore, if you can tap the right chemistry in the right way at the right time, guess what? You're going to be more consistent in your motivation. We kind of lightly touched on this, but let's just delve a little bit deeper into sustaining the motivation. So I want to do something. I want to get to an outcome. I've kind of started doing it, but how can I be... the question I get a lot from people is, how can I be more consistent? What are some of the strategies to remain and be more consistent in pursuit of that goal?
I think that, essentially, we've already talked about establishing, breaking down the broader goal into a series of sort of mini horizons, if you like, and then...
Mini rewards, rewarding the effort. You mean that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think on a day-to-day basis, it's about the daily disciplines, the cumulative impact of your daily practices and behaviours. So if you've got something you really want to achieve, as we've explored earlier, there's plenty of things that can soon fill up your time. So you have to be intentional about how you divide your day to spend that time in pursuit of your goals. And that, as I said, comes down to the daily disciplines. And the easiest way to achieve things over a period of time is to establish routines. So if your goal was to learn to play the piano, for example, then establishing a daily or weekly routine where you spend 20 minutes a day doing a bit of practice, the cumulative impact of that is going to take you towards your goal.
It's what our friend Colin calls tiny, easy actions, isn't it? T-plan, he calls it. Tiny, easy action. What are some of the things you can do that are almost frictionless? When we start out something new, it feels good when you tell your friends that, you're going to start a new business and you're going to take on the world and you're going to smash this and you're going to, you're going to run a marathon when you've not even run or whatever it is. It feels great. It feels good. Yeah, of course. Great. Do it for your own flattery, but just know that probably going to end in tears and you're probably going to end up in that sort of stop-start thing. So if you want to be have a little bit more of a sustainable strategy, then we would suggest you don't have to tell people about this bit. Just give them the end goal if you want to flatter yourself. But in reality, the way to get yourself to be more sustainable is to write down something which is a small, tiny, easy to do action, clear action. I think I've given this sort of example before, but, I had problems with my shoulder and it was constantly playing up, stopping me training. And I kind of had this habit of off to the physio, get it fixed, off to the osteopath, chiropractor, click, crack, bang, back in the gym again. All right. But in between, they'd always tell me that what you really need to do is work on the sort of micro muscles around the joint to strengthen them because they're not working properly. And because they're not working properly, it's causing secondary pain. Of course, these exercises are boring.
And because they're so tiny, you don't think they're actually can.
You're not getting any immediate hit or benefit from doing it. So but by breaking that down, and so I kind of go through this cycle, and I then they got into this habit of literally setting a small goal of 5 minutes. Yeah. So I'm going to minimum goal is 5 minutes. My kind of my target goal might be 10 minutes. Yeah. And like an audacious goal might be 15. I always felt that every single day I could do 5 minutes. It's not difficult.
You can't really argue with 5 minutes, can you?
And if 5 minutes became difficult, change it to 1. Yeah. What you don't want to do is do nothing. Because as soon as your brain gets out of the habit of doing nothing, it feels comfortable with nothing.
And, in establishing a routine, we called it in a previous one, is like stacking that over something you're already doing. You say whilst you're making your cup of tea in the morning, you can do your, your exercises or whatever. Yeah. But
listen to our podcast on habits. Yeah. Because that podcast will definitely help you a little bit more with this. Yeah. But essentially, it's having something that you can do that will be consistent and that is an accumulative impact. And recognizing that it's much hard. You can never really play catch up, can you?
No.
You know, you can't. Oh, I'll delay this and then just go crazy at the end of the month. I'm gonna go to the gym. Going to the gym 3 times a week is a lot healthier than spending the entire weekend in the gym in one session at the end of the month.
And the thing is,
right?
as well, the cumulative impact of daily disciplines in a positive direction also works the other way.
Yeah.
You don't go, you get less fit. You know, using the gym as an example.
Yeah.
I think there's another book. I think it's called Nudge. Have you come across that? But essentially, what they're saying is exactly that. It's nudging, you know, small actions and small behaviours in the direction of your goals. That's the key to sustaining motivation.
It's relatively frictionless.
Yeah.
It's relatively easy to do. You're not met with this sort of feeling of dread when you think about doing it. And the reality is, as we know, the hardest thing to do is to get started. So once you get started, you're more likely to do more.
Yeah.
You know, the first mile of a 5-mile run or a 10-mile run is the hardest.
And it's true, isn't it? You know, if you get into a routine of doing something and it becomes the way you do, then when you stop doing it for one day or something, you sort of miss it. But you stop doing it for 3 or 4 days, then you very quickly, that becomes the new thing that you do.
Lisa.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the end, right?
And I think the important thing in motivation as well is being your own best cheerleader. So focusing what you have actually done and you have actually achieved. Even if it is only 1 minute or 5 minutes of the thing that's going to take you in your direction of your goal, you're still moving forwards. So reward yourself for every action, not just the massive you know, leaps in the direction of your goal. You know, that self-directed horizon control and those regular dopamine hits, no matter how big or small they are, is so important.
I think one other thing is to attach a different meaning to setbacks and mini setbacks.
Yeah, because they are going to happen.
Almost inevitable.
You know, the world still goes on. The whole world is not in the direction of your goals, so you will face challenges and road bumps along the way. Accepting number one, it's going to happen, and it's part of the pursuit of health, wealth, success, prosperity, happiness, or whatever. It's just because it doesn't make. I know it just seems so completely obvious that you would reframe something, a setback, as a learning experience. I always think it's so completely obvious that people would do that, but they don't. And even if intellectually, if they're hearing this and they go, yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely, yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense to do that. It doesn't mean to say it actually happens in practice. Otherwise, you know, why aren't more people being more consistent? Yeah. Why do they get put off by these mini setbacks and drawbacks? So having a growth mindset, which, as you know, Carol Dweck, you know, proposed this idea that if we see that it's the effort we put into something over a period of time, the growth we get from it is more important than necessarily the belief that I have to have the reward immediately or I have to succeed immediately. Yeah. And that was the experiment we did with the kids. The kids that kept on trying were just basically getting more excitement. They were enjoying the pursuit of the goal than necessarily the attainment of the goal itself. So I think that's sort of... And I think if you do face setbacks, just like there are many horizons, there can be many starts, can't there? You know, our good friend Jim, who was on last week's podcast, talks about, you know, rather than a challenge like a 21-day challenge, he has 7 3-day challenges, you know, lots of mini horizons, lots of mini restarts. So if you do face a setback, that's an opportunity to reset, go again. 3
habits, 3 days.
Yeah.
Tick the box whether you get them or not. Go to the end of the 3 days. I did 2 out of the 3, great. Go to the next one.
Yeah.
You know, if at the end of the 21 days you haven't done one of them, well, probably you're not interested.
Yeah.
All right.
Probably the why is probably
the why is not strong enough.
Yeah.
The ought to is not, you know, it's more ought to than want to. So yeah, maybe knock it off the list.
The final thing we were just going to explore is the role that accountability plays in long-term motivation. Because as we know and have mentioned before, commitments made in public to someone else are much more sustainable than those made in private. What do you sort of see as the role of accountability in sustaining long-term motivation?
Yeah, if I think about, when I was kind of training for a cycle race, well, not a race, but a cycle ride, a decent cycle ride. If we made a commitment to each other, we were going to meet each other in a certain, park at 6 a.m. in the morning. My motivation to go substantially increased.
Yeah.
If you cared about the other riders and they cared about you. If you were going to go on that ride on your own, then you're much more less likely, because you've only got yourself to deal with. But if I know I've got 6 other riders and they literally are waiting for me,
you might be letting
and they've
them
got
down.
up really early to be there and ride right nutrition, etc. So yes, commitments definitely made in public is an absolute winner. Absolutely, and doing this both, whether or not it's something personal, when we do corporate training programs and we get people to make commitments to each other and we have them speak on a regular basis, and there are milestones and there are goals and they've got to report back to that individual, it massively increases the probability of people actually applying that particular skill. I know as a coach to people, when people I'm coaching people, coaching without any question significantly increases the likelihood of people following through on a program.
Yeah.
If you have a training program, leadership, development, coaching, whatever skills it is, and you have no coaching afterwards, there's very little accountability. We would like to think we could have trust in somebody's personal commitment, but in reality it's just so unreliable.
Yeah, we're too easy on ourselves, but we do not want A, to let somebody else down, and B, we don't want the pain of someone saying, how are you getting on with that thing that you said you were going to do? You don't want to have to say, actually, I've done nothing. So it's so important, and that's why we structure Power Up in the way we do, because a group come together and they are they have shared accountability within that group.
I mean, it is, in a way, it's like a mini consequence. And if there are no consequences, there is absolutely no consequences. And that's why I was talking earlier about pain and gain.
Yeah.
Pain and pleasure. That's why both these systems work so well together.
Yeah.
If there is some consequence of you not doing something, then you're unlikely to take action. If there are some consequences there, you get a feeling from it, don't you?
Yeah.
Right? And that feeling, again, fuels your motivation. So having something reward, benefit of doing that activity, and then having some consequence. So accountability, it's like I have a personal trainer. I meet the trainer once a week. He sets me a schedule of 3 sessions. I do 2 on my own and 1 with him. What's the first question he asks when I walk through the door?
What have you done?
How's your training been going? All right. And I've been known to squeeze in that final session on the Sunday, even though I'm meeting him on the Monday, because I'd rather have the inconvenience, or I might see at the time, if I'm on a Sunday afternoon want to watch the football or something, or have that temporary bit of pain there rather than the even greater embarrassment,
huge pain of having to say,
once again, I haven't done my sessions. Yeah. So I know it feels a bit negative, but they're just consequences do have their play in motivation.
But I think accountability, the accountability relationship can be massively positive. You can support somebody else in achieving something they want to do and share their and help them with their progress, and they can do the same.
You think about the excitement you've got knowing that you're going to meet your accountability buddy, or if I'm going to meet my PT, I'm excited about telling him what I've done. Yeah. And particularly if I've done more than I said I was going to do. Yeah. Oh, I'm buzzing about it. Or I've even got the hit before I've even got there. Yeah. I'm excited about telling him about
sort of
it.
Fast forward to the situation of telling him.
So, it's almost like the accountability as well is a little bit of competition there as well. And Colin, our friend Colin, has this, as you know, this habit hacker app. And accountability is a massive part of that. And actually even gets people to write up what they've done.
Yeah.
And the writing up what they've done actually inspires other people, because you're looking and thinking, oh, damn, I haven't done that.
Yeah,
I said I was going to do it and I haven't done it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that great, does it? So I need to make sure that I want to feel good. I don't want to feel bad. I don't feel, so again, tapping into feelings, accountability, has positive impact. So definitely add that to your list, and add all these things together. All of these things. I think the thing is for motivation, and I don't want anybody listening to this thinking, well, not every one of these things applies to me. And of course they won't. We're all motivated, one, by different things, and we're motivated in a different way. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another.
Yeah.
Anyone who's a leader, a manager listening to this will know that to be very true. You have to find what is it that flicks somebody's switch, makes them more, what is it that turns them on? What are the triggers for that person to have, to want to be fueled? It would be great if we could just rely on ourselves. But the reality is we need the support of other people around us.
We're going to let ourselves off the hook
easily,
faster than anybody else, because we want to be safe and comfortable, and that's the way we're wired. We are not wired for behaviour change. We have to work at that. And I think these ingredients that we've talked about today will give you the best chance of actually doing that.
So by way of a quick recap of what we've covered in this podcast around this all-important subject of firing up and, more importantly, sustaining our motivation. First thing we spoke about is desire. Absolutely sits at the heart of who we are as human beings. Work out what that is for you and go in pursuit of those particular things. So recognize it's just there. It's natural energy. The second thing, it was to do with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And I think our advice here is probably veered slightly more towards the more reliable source of motivation, which is intrinsic. So working out those things that are natural to you, things you really want to do. The third area is understanding the importance of the why behind the what.
Yeah.
And that is going to fuel your motivation a lot longer than actually what you're doing. Understand why it's important to you.
And then we talked about the role of pain and pleasure, and the need to flick the switch in terms of your motivation, creating pain with inaction and pleasure with taking action. We then talked about dopamine and how the role that dopamine plays in sustaining motivation, and the use of self-directed horizon control, many horizons, many rewards. We also looked at the role of routine and the impact of daily disciplines, cumulative actions in direction of your goal.
And then finally, a growth mindset. And that is essentially at the heart of it, is associating anything with setbacks or failures with learning.
Yeah.
And that is going to, knowing that in advance, will allow you to step outside your comfort zone and take on new challenges, knowing that you're going to learn from that experience. And not be so associated to having to necessarily get the outcome. And the last thing, most importantly, accountability. Find yourself somebody that going to be an accountability buddy to you. Someone's going to keep you honest. Someone's going to keep you real, and build in a few consequences of not taking action. That could be even by giving money away to charity or something if you don't do something.
Yeah.
But you're really, if you put all these things together, and we would encourage you to learn more about each of these things, you will find that your motivation levels are just more consistent. And that, of course, ultimately has huge long-term benefits, greater levels of happiness, prosperity, wealth, health, numerous things.
Yeah.
So do pursue these ideas, try them out for yourself, and of course, as always, share them with other people. And the next one, Lisa.
So the next one, very exciting, we're going to be talking about business storytelling with our very good friend David Bliss.
That's going to be exciting. Yeah.
So we look forward to bringing you that one next week. And in the meantime, feel free to share this episode and download the Power Tool as always, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Until next time.